I have not yet seen it.
Oh my God.
And here we go. Here's where it's going to get bad for us. Okay.
Be careful.
I'm already
getting tons of hateful comments
I'm
about
going
Star
to be
Wars.
as cautious as I possibly can here.
We are breaking down the top 10 TV shows of 2022, and we have a special guest because on this podcast, Evan and I's relationship is an open relationship.
Yeah.
We're not monogamous podcast-wise.
No. And I mean, your beef from last week shows that we're not completely monogamous.
Well, if anything, the beef has opened me up to the idea of bringing in a third into this podcast relationship.
Sure.
This podcast relationship.
Right.
So without further ado, welcome to the Professional Appreciators Podcast, my brother, Dan Drake.
Hey.
What did we call him last?
Good to be here.
Oh, he is the godfather of the YouTube channel.
The godfather of the YouTube channel, the creator.
And don't you forget it.
Yeah.
We will never forget.
For those of you who have been watching the Why It's Great YouTube channel for a while, you may recognize Dan's face and recognize his voice because he was basically the guy running that channel until a year ago. So with that being said, Dan, welcome back, and maybe catch everyone up real quick on where you've been and what you've been doing.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and have my face on the channel again. So about almost a year and a half ago, I got a job offer to come work for another podcast. And so I now am the creative director for the Rich Roll podcast. That's RICHROLL, Rich Roll podcast. And got to move me and my family to outside of LA where we, produce the show. We produce it here in the studio. And basically like a dream job for me. But because I wanted to focus 100% on this new gig, I realized I wasn't going to have time to commit to the channel anymore. And so I'm very appreciative, Andrew, that you stepped up and, took a crash course in video editing to keep it alive. So thank you guys. Yeah. I appreciate it. And now with the podcast and bringing Evan in, it's just growing and growing, and I can't wait to see how it continues to do so. So
we are breaking down not the top 5, not the top 7, because who would do that? We're talking the top 10 TV shows of 2022.
Get ready to be here for 3 hours.
Yeah. So yeah, it's going to be a while. So real quick, just so everyone's on the same page, we're each going to go down our list from 10 to 1, 1 being our favorite TV show of 2022. And we're going to have Dan go first, and we're just going to go in order. He'll say his 10, then we'll go 10 down the line. You guys have seen this before. This isn't groundbreaking. I think you got it.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of great TV this last year. I haven't been able to keep up as much as I want, so I'm really looking forward to hear what Dan and Evan have to say. They've watched a little bit more TV than I have. So, Dan, you are our guest. How about you start us with your number 10?
Top 10. My number 10 is a little known show called House of the Dragon.
Wow, number 10.
He went number 10. How much good TV are you watching? Holy crap, you went 10 with that. All right.
Okay, why is it barely making your list?
It's barely making my list because, and I used to be ashamed to admit this, and now I am no longer ashamed. I wear it proudly that I'm a little fantasy allergic in my
That's true.
viewing habits with media. I'm not the biggest fan of Lord of the Rings, and really anything set in like a medieval timesy kind of world it's just not my thing.
I hear you, man.
House of the Dragon, however, captured me. And if it's higher on, one of y'all's list, we can talk about it more later. But that's why I think it's lower on mine than probably on yours.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Evan, it's higher on my list. I'm sure
it's higher on my list as well.
So we'll maybe break down why it's a great show in a little bit.
The original Game of Thrones show was kind of a slog for me, honestly, until the dragons and magic showed up a little bit more. I mean,
talk about like the most diametrically opposed take. anyone's ever had about that show.
Dude, I tell you what, Game of Thrones, what a slog. The Red Wedding, I could barely stay awake.
I mean, it's good. It's a top, show of all time, certainly. But I'm just being real, man. There was just times where I was like, nothing is happening in this show right now. But yeah, but before I get, just slaughtered in the comments for my Game of Thrones take, I just want to, go back and defend myself a little bit just by saying, again, the fantasy of it all and the medieval times of it all, it's just not my favorite time period.
Yeah.
Even in historical dramas, if they're set in the medieval times. I really had to watch Monty Python and the Holy Grail a few times before I even liked that and could appreciate it. That's how allergic I initially
Dan was
am.
like,
Can we stick to one insanely popular thing that you dislike at a time?
Let it be known, this is the man who started the channel, why it's great.
Exactly, which is why there's no video on Monty Python and the Holy Grail. No, but I do really love that movie now, and I've found ways into those stories just over the years because I didn't want to be like, I just hate all these things and I'll never like it. So anyway, when I really started to fall in love with Game of Thrones is when they would do crazy things. They would kill main characters. At the end of the first season with Ned Stark, I was like, okay, this show is doing something groundbreaking. I like that. And I found things to appreciate about it. But when the dragons and the magic and stuff really kicked in the later seasons, which I know have their flaws, but it I was just starting to like it better. So House of the Dragon strikes me as a show that from the get-go has those pieces that I like the most from the first one, but also has the deft storytelling hand of the first few seasons of Game of Thrones. So I feel like it's kind of for me at least, the best of both. And you get that right from the start.
All right. Well, yeah, Evan and I will definitely talk a little bit more about it when we get to it. But Evan, how about you put us back on a more solid ground here and tell us your number 10.
My number 10, and I struggled with the 8, 9, and 10 slot because there was just so much good TV this year. But I had to go with something from the Flaniverse.
Ooh,
and I put Midnight Club at number 10. And I really liked this season of TV. It was something that really stuck with me. I thought about it a lot after it ended. And the more I thought about it, the more I liked it. At first, initially, I didn't think it was the strongest season of horror that he's done. For Netflix, but I really ended up enjoying it. I like the story. It's something different, and that's my number 10.
All right, real quick, Dan, was that on your list at all?
It almost was, but it is not on my list.
It's not on my list.
It almost didn't make my cut.
Only because I never finished it. And in my defense,
oh my God.
In my defense, I was primarily watching it in November, and once I hit December, remember, I had a little event called a wedding on the 10th of December. And
excuses.
Every show I was watching just dropped. And, all of December went by. And now I'm like, I need to get back to it. But it was just, I've been away too long.
All right.
But I was liking what I was watching.
Let me tell you why it didn't make my list. It's because even though I really enjoyed it, number one, like you said, Evan, it wasn't as scary as I was hoping from a Flaniverse thing.
Yeah.
Number two, it just really, really pissed me off that they got canceled. And so when I was making the list and I'm looking at a master list of shows to pick, my gut was now I have a little bit of a negative view of the show just because it makes me sad.
Yeah.
When I think about the fact that it got canceled.
All right. My number 10 is Stranger Things season 4.
Oh, okay.
And the reason it's number 10 on my list and not higher is mostly because we talked about when we did a podcast episode about it is I thought it was a step up from season 3.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it, but, and this is kind of a critique of Stranger Things as a whole, it really relies on archetypes and storylines and story structures of larger pop culture. So like I talked about how it really does do the whole Empire Strikes Back thing, and it relies on other 80s storylines to kind of move its characters forward.
Yeah.
And though I think it uses that familiarity well, it also still at the end of the day feels a little kind of familiar. And I think all the other shows on my list are more original. And so that's why I put Stranger Things at 10.
Gotcha.
Stranger Things is another one that almost made my list, but is not on my list.
Yeah, it almost made mine as well.
Sadie Sink, MVP of that season. She was really
I
good.
was going to say that, man. She was amazing in that season. She was so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. We blew right through it because it actually came out when we had COVID.
Oh,
it was
perfect.
like, we were just able to go one after the other over like 2 days, and then the break, and then again.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was just too many more things that I thought were better.
Yeah. So. Yeah, and real quick, I don't want to make this too quick of an aside, but I think its bingeability made it a little bit more disposable in my mind, because a lot of the shows on this list aren't bingeable shows. And it had a longer discourse, had longer time for me to really think about each episode. And I think that actually works against Stranger Things, because I almost forgot that it was a 2022 show.
You know, I almost, I wasn't in a hurry to watch it for whatever reason. Whenever it came out, I just didn't feel like I was in a huge rush to like hop on Netflix and start watching the episodes. But I heard people start talking about how like savage the violence and like the gore was, and like honestly,
that's your alley, man.
I was like, let's test this out. Let's see. Let's see.
All right, well, let's get this.
I get into a debate with some people here about like, should you watch things week to week or should you binge them? And like some people here, even like on a week to week show, will wait until they're all out and then binge it. But
I've done that before.
It depends, you know.
For that reason that you just said, Andrew, I love week to week watching.
Yeah.
And so I feel like Stranger Things is a show, like you said, that would have benefited from week to week.
Well, let's get this show on the road so it's not a 9-hour podcast.
Yeah.
Dan.
Yep. Here we go. My number 9. And I know I'm gonna make you angry with this.
Oh no.
God.
Oh no.
My number 9. Barry.
Number 9?
Number 9.
Oh
I actually haven't
gosh.
seen Barry, so
You still haven't gotten to see.
Oh, really?
I haven't seen him, man.
You're both off the podcast.
I know.
All right. Why is
Barry is
your number
incredible.
9?
It is so well made. They had so many sequences this year that took my breath away. But when I think back to it, it doesn't win a place in my heart as much as some of the other shows, because it doesn't move me as emotionally as some other shows do. And I tend to prioritize that. I appreciate how well made it is. I appreciate how well written it is, how well acted.
Bill Hader.
It is incredible. But there's something about it, and maybe it's because each episode is so short, or maybe because the seasons are short, but it doesn't stay with me.
Yeah.
I don't, you know what I mean?
I'll talk about this when I get it to my episode, because it's not as high as I thought it was going to be. But this season, Barry's character, compared to the first 2 seasons, he wasn't as empathetic, and it made it harder for you to like really root for him. And I think this season, there was a bit of a lag for me in those stretches where Barry was like indefensible as a character, that made it hard to be like, I'm in his corner and root for him and want to see what's happening to him. But I'll get to that later. Evan, please don't break my heart like Evan. Dan just did.
I feel like this is a very appropriate place on my list for this show. I don't know if I'm the only one out of the 3 of us that liked this show or that watched this show, but at my number 9 slot, I've got Murderville.
Oh, I didn't even
Hilarious.
think about
Yes.
like I didn't even think about that as an option.
Murderville
That's
was
great pick.
one of my, like, it had me dying laughing. Like, it's one of the only comedy TV shows that had me like howling out loud this year. And they just released an hour-long Christmas special.
Hilarious.
And it was it does not disappoint.
So good.
So yeah, if people watching this or listening to this have not seen Murderville, you have got to check out Murderville. The whole premise of the show is that like 95% of it is improvised by the guests on the show, and it just leads to some absolutely hilarious scenarios and moments.
And if there's any Smartless fans out there, Will Arnett is the star, and the Christmas special has all three of the Smartless hosts in the special.
Yep. Yeah, so it's freaking awesome.
Yeah,
it's
that's
really
a great
awesome.
pick. I honestly didn't even think about it.
I thought that one might take you off guard a little bit.
I liked it. All right, my number 9, and maybe this will fit the theme of shows not on your guys' list. Peacemaker.
Yes. Yep.
Had so much fun with Peacemaker.
I loved Peacemaker.
I am a huge James Gunn fan, especially of his Guardians movies. So I liked the Suicide Squad on DC, and this was an extension of that. John Cena is just a great comedic actor at this moment. The juxtaposition of like his just physique, but then his, just goofball kind of idiot counterpart of a personality really works in James Gunn's writing style. And again, like James Gunn does with Guardians, he's so good at taking these larger than life, crazy characters, hyper violent characters, and then finding their heart and finding their emotionality and bringing these misfits together. And it's almost predictable at this point, like, oh, a band of misfits coming together, but he just finds a way to make it work.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I was just having a blast with that show.
Yeah, I loved that show this year. It almost made my list.
Yeah, it is not on my list either. But I did enjoy it. There's a lot to appreciate about it.
Yeah.
And now he's running DC, so
yeah,
that's pretty crazy.
That is crazy.
All right, number 8, Dan.
Number 8 is, and this one might be recency bias, but maybe not. I really, really enjoyed it. It's Fleischman is in Trouble.
Oh man,
I haven't gotten to that.
I haven't gotten a chance to watch that yet, but I've heard it's great.
Okay.
It's fantastic.
Why should we watch it?
Absolutely fantastic. You should watch it because it has some of the best performances in a television show that I've seen in a long time. I mean, gosh, what's her name? She played Carrie Matheson in Homeland.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
I'm blanking on her name.
She was in the Leo DiCaprio Romeo and Juliet, right?
Oh,
yeah. Claire Danes.
Claire Danes, yeah.
Claire Danes. Claire Danes is a tour de force in this. She is like the freak out queen. If you liked Homeland and you love to see her just like freak out, like she took it, she cranked it to 11 in Fleischman is in Trouble.
And it's Jesse Eisenberg.
Jesse Eisenberg is great. And here's what's the best about the performances in the show is that the show is told from one of the characters who's a friend of Toby Fleischman. So Toby Fleischman in the beginning is framed as the protagonist.
Oh, interesting.
And it's being narrated by his best friend. And so you get the story of his divorce and the disappearance of his wife from his perspective,
kind of like
through
Gatsby?
the eyes of his friend, Lizzie Kaplan.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And so she's narrating it. So you're already one step removed through you're getting the best friend's view of Toby's perspective. So that's a second layer of the divorce to Claire Danes. And so you're realizing I'm only getting one perspective on this relationship, and it's what Toby tells his friend about it.
That's
See what I'm saying?
Wow.
And so
Yeah.
as the show goes, Lizzie Kaplan, like, I don't want to give too much away, but she's a journalist in the show, and she starts peeling the onion layers back, seeing more perspectives. And they do a cool thing where, like, you start to see scenes that you've already seen, but from a different perspective. And so the performances are even different.
Oh, I gotcha.
Okay, this is going to be the next show I watch.
Yeah. That's cool.
FX, right?
It's great.
Yeah, I think so.
Yes.
Okay.
I watched it on Hulu. Yeah, FX on Hulu.
I got to get into that.
Yeah, that sounds really good.
All right, Evan?
Okay, so number 8, I'm almost positive this is a show neither of you have seen. I'm going with Outer Range.
I
loved Outer Range.
Josh Brolin. I feel like Outer Range. You saw it. Wow, that kind of surprises me. But you watch so much TV. It seems like this year. My one gripe about Outer Range is how dark everything was on net. Like it's everything on Amazon is just too dark. But like literally, I was sitting in a pitch black room with the screen completely dark. Like I don't know what's happening, and a couple of times that was really terrifying. Wow. Because I was like, everything is dark. I can't see a damn thing. I have no idea what's going on. But no, I loved that show. It is reminiscent, not at all in style, but like it almost reminds me of like a Lost type of mystery, kind of like
mystery
like
box.
What is going on? Like I have no idea what's happening. I don't know the rules. I don't know, like that's the big thing is I just don't know what the rules are in this scenario. And I just loved it. And as the show unfolds, it just gets more and more interesting and fascinating. And that show is a little bit of a slow burn because Josh Brolin plays everything so close to the chest.
It's a very slow burn.
But it's well worth it by the end to kind of understand a little bit more of what's going on. And also, I'm just a sucker for like they blended the modern with kind of the classic Western aesthetic. And I love that aesthetic. And it just hit me in all the right places.
All right. Well, my true number 8, and I'm curious, Dan, to see if this is higher on your list, is Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Man, that was so good.
I got to get into that.
It's, look, I'll preface it with this. I am not a huge Trekkie. I don't have Trekkie like street cred or anything, but, I grew up watching The Next Generation with Dan. I've seen a little bit of the original series. I've seen a lot of the movies. So I do like that world, but I'm not like crazy about the lore or anything. But as someone who's been trying all the new Star Trek shows, this is the one that finally clicked and one that was like, okay, I'm going to watch every stinking season of this as they release it. Yeah. Because it's 10 episodes. They understand what makes Star Trek work, which is that Twilight Zone quality to the storytelling where they're exploring all these different new settings and worlds. And so each episode is its own little self-contained Twilight Zone kind of moral lesson-y type thing, all while still building a larger arc of Anson Mount's character playing Captain Pike and his internal conflict with knowing his own death and how he's going to confront that future. And the season finale was just like Dan, as a big Star Trek fan, what did you think of that season finale where you get introduced to I don't know, is that a spoiler?
It's okay.
I don't think so.
You get
it's on articles.
Yeah, you get introduced to Kirk, like a new younger version of Kirk.
Gotcha.
And kind of teasing this passing of the baton and Pike contemplating like, oh, I actually need to eventually get out of the way for Kirk because that's better for the universe.
Right.
I just thought that was really cool.
Strange New Worlds is fantastic. Yeah, like the episode where Kirk and his lady switch bodies, like they do the Parent Trap. That's great. And actually, I watched like the first 5 episodes, and then I was like, Jess, I think you'll like this Star Trek. And so I watched them again with Jess.
Yeah,
that's how much I liked.
That's love.
It's the only show this year that I watched episodes more than once.
Yeah, I will say there. Since they are self-contained stories, are a couple dud episodes. It's going to happen with that type of storytelling.
Sure.
But I mean, way more hits than misses, and even the duds aren't like to the point where you're going to turn it off like halfway through.
Right.
But yeah, I think Captain Pike, honestly, at this point, as not a big Star Trek fan, but just seen a little bit, he might be winning me over as my favorite captain of all the TV shows. Like, I love this version of Pike.
Wow.
Like, I would go to war for that man. I would follow him anywhere.
The whole thing of him knowing his future is like, it's such a unique take on that kind of show.
Yeah.
It gives a very like, each episode is its own thing kind of show. It gives it that like propulsion,
that larger
like, grand
character arc.
that kind of keeps it together. So number 7, here's the show that I said, and this is going to be different. I guarantee you, neither one of you have ever even heard of this show.
All right.
I can't wait.
It's called The Big Brunch.
Yep, that sounds fake.
I have This is a show Dan wrote.
It sounds like a YouTube show.
No. It's
Go ahead.
on HBO Max.
All right.
It is a cooking show. It's not scripted.
Better than Barry?
It was created by Dan Levy.
Okay.
Of Schitt's Creek fame.
Yeah.
And it is so surprisingly good that, I mean, it has to be to beat out some of these other shows I've talked about.
Yeah.
The best way I can describe it is it's the Queer Eye of cooking shows.
So it's
Really?
If you watch
reality.
any Queer Eye.
Yeah.
It's reality.
Kind of. It's just this group of, chefs, professional chefs. They're competing for $300,000. And the judges are Dan Levy, the New York Times cooking editor, and the founder of the restaurant that they say is the best restaurant in the world. And
Applebee's?
these chefs are just such a diverse group. And it's just precious. They're just like all help each other.
Yeah.
And every episode was like making me cry, man.
Oh, wow.
I was just like,
Yeah.
they're just so, it's just so tender. And they're like, a lot of them, talk about, struggling to find out who they are. And like one of them is, several of them are people of color. And like one person I think is Chinese. And so her like authentic Chinese dishes, a lot of times American people kind of, stick their nose up to that kind of cuisine. It's not Chinese food that we think of. It's like the authentic stuff. But she was like, I'm going to make the real stuff and I'm going to like make it right. And the judges just like were praising her for that. And just to see her just like be able to accept who she is through that, you know what I mean? And it's just like, it's just one example of many. So I don't know. I'm a big softie. I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff.
That sounds
Queer
like I would
Eye
like
is
that a lot.
One of my favorite shows also. But I just, me and Jess just watched this, and talk about a show sticking with you. Like, it just hit me in the heart, and I love it. And I was going to put it on my underrated list, but the more I thought about it, the more I was like, I love this enough to just put it in my main list. So there you go, everybody.
All right.
If you want a good, heartwarming cooking show, The Big Brunch.
That sounds awesome. So for my number 7, I know Andrew hasn't seen this because we haven't talked about it. I feel like Dan will have seen this. It's actually a docu-series, The Last Movie Stars, the Ethan Hawke directed.
I don't know it.
Oh, man.
Wait, is this the one where it had like Paul Newman stuff in it?
Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward. So it's the Ethan Hawke directed docu-series about Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward's basically life and relationship. And this really, like, by the end of the show, it really struck me because you really get a sense of a life well lived. And I think we all hope to have a life well lived by the end of our lives, and just do a lot of different things with our lives. And it was just two people like that in their love story and in their art, made a lot of mistakes, were very generous, did, good things, bad things. And you got to kind of just see it all play out in their art at the same time. And it's just a fascinating story. Their life story is amazing. Ethan Hawke approaches it with such reverence, really, which is cool and refreshing, and really felt like he really felt you could tell a conviction about finding the heart of what this docuseries was supposed to be about and how to kind of honor that story. Kind of how it all happened was one of their daughters asked him to direct it, and the materials that they had were transcripts that had been written down from, everyone that they had worked with, from producers and directors to like housekeepers. And it was just interviews asking them what they thought of Paul Newman or what they thought of Joanne Woodward. And they would have them talk about it, and they had them all recorded on tapes. And Paul Newman one day decided that there was enough Paul Newman out in the world, and he took them all out and he burned them, the tapes, but they still had the transcripts. So they have actors come in and play some of these famous characters from the past that were directors and producers talking about working with Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward. So it's just a really fascinating docuseries. It was something different for a docuseries. And by the end of it, as somebody that plays music and tries to make things, it made me feel encouraged about just trying things and putting yourself out there and trying to make something, even if you don't know if it's going to be good, that along the way you can still learn something. That's how it was. I thought it was a really, really, really well done.
Speaking of docuseries, kind of, my number 7 is The Rehearsal.
Yeah.
I mean, just right off the top, the most unique television show of the year, hands down.
Yeah.
I've got that higher on my list.
I have that higher on my list as well.
I struggled so hard. I don't know. I think if we recorded this a week from now, it would be higher. It just, but I was looking at some of these other shows and yeah. Regardless, Nathan Fielder goes full Synecdoche, New York on us.
Man.
And what I love the most is how it really brought up a lot of conversation about how people actually prefer the illusion of a scenario than the reality of the scenario.
Yeah.
And that when he gets all these people to rehearse these events, what you slowly find is that humans like the idea and fiction of a certain scenario or outcome way more than the reality. And him exposing that was really cool. And the Twitter and the online conversations around it of, is he going too far? All that stuff, I think, made it a unique viewing experience. And it really was interesting to watch an episode each week and to get online and see everyone kind of debate it. And the fact that it was controversial, I'm not saying it's good it's controversial, but it just made it stand out even more. And it made me think about the show in a much more intellectually rich way than a show like that playing it safe. I don't know, but if you guys have it higher, we can talk about it more then. But wow, just so good.
Yeah.
All right, number 6. My number 6 is Severance.
Wow. All right, that's way
I'm sure
way
it's
higher.
Probably higher on y'all's list.
Yeah.
So we don't have to talk about it too much. But yeah, it's fantastic. One of my favorite experiences of the year.
There's almost nothing else to say about Severance. It's just so stinking good.
I mean, it's on my list.
Yeah, me too.
Up there.
So.
Okay, so my number 6 is the newest season of Better Call Saul.
What?
Oh. Number 6?
Number 6?
Yeah. Yes. That's where I put it.
Okay. Well, it's higher on my list.
Hold on. I gotta make a Craigslist ad for podcast hosts right now.
I'm telling you, man. I made, and this is I saw this coming, and that's why I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, I made this list with in mind, what did I want to come back and take another bite out of every week, or every, what did I think of in the morning? I want to go home and watch this.
Yeah, you're not helping your case for me.
I'm sorry, but that's just personally, it's just how I felt about the very, very last season of Better Call Saul, that it's number 6. It is excellent television, top tier, excellent, distilled, pure television, but it's my number 6, and that's just how I feel.
I mean, I can respect it. I've had some crazy takes here as well, but yeah, man, I had something I was gonna say, but I lost it. We can cut this out.
Your memory was wiped by how horrible of a decision.
I remember. No, I remember now. Here, so just pick it up here. Yeah, man, I get it. I've had some hot takes here as well, but this makes me very excited to see what the rest of your list is.
I know, right?
No, I actually think that we're going to really start to line up here shortly. I think we're all going to get pretty close.
I swear, if you have like Bing Bong's Playhouse is like number 4 or whatever weird show, I'm going to be so mad. Oh my gosh.
You don't like Bing Bong's Playhouse?
Oh, you guys are
you're to Apple
Bing
TV
Bong's
Plus.
Playhouse?
You're crazy, man. You don't like Bing Bong's Playhouse?
Yeah.
So, Andrew, you're up, buddy. Number 6. Are you recalculating?
Okay. There's some egg on my face. I didn't put a number 6.
Oh.
My list goes 10, 9, 8, 7, 5, 4, 3, 2. Wait, hold on. Well, I don't want to show you my list, but
do you want to go with Under the Banner of Heaven?
There you go.
I literally wrote out 10 through 1 without a number 6. What is wrong with me? Yeah, so now I don't even know what to do. So let's just say Under the Banner of Heaven would not have been my number 6, but it would have been my number 10.
It's in the top 10.
So yeah, let's say that would have been 10, so then the rehearsal would have been my 6, so.
Okay, there we go.
Oh my, what is wrong?
Well, my number 5 is The Rehearsal.
Hey, me too.
Oh
okay,
yeah.
So I wasn't that far.
Sorry if I ruined it.
Yeah.
Ruined the progression, but that's also my number 5.
But I mean, yeah, just to pick up the thread, and I don't have to talk that much more about it, but it was the most unique television experience of the year, like Andrew said. It, like you said, Evan, like, talk about something I wanted to watch every week. It was like I could not wait to watch that every single week. And it was actually also surprisingly moving.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, especially in the later episodes. I loved in the first episode, it kind of set it up like it was going to be, okay, every week is going to be this. Where I'm going to have a new person every week, and we're going to just do this rehearsal
different
thing.
rehearsal.
And I was like, I'm on board. That sounds cool.
Yeah.
And then as it went, where it was like, okay, another episode about this woman in the house, another episode about this. And it just kind of evolved. There was a shot where, like, a young kid goes down a slide, and then it's like, no, the older kid goes down the slide, and then it's the young kid again.
Yeah.
And it like moved me, and I was like, oh my gosh, like.
Yeah. The part that got to me the most probably was whenever he wanted to redo parts of the child's youth that he missed.
Exactly.
And that part really got to me, where I was just like, oh man, just like this idea that he's doing a rehearsal and he can do whatever he wants, and he can go back and live years 3 through 6 again. Mm-hmm. But like, when you have a little kid, you can't get a single moment that you miss back. And it just like really drove that home to me. And I think for him, he felt the weight of like, well, I didn't get to experience this time. I didn't get to experience these years what could I have done better or what could I have done different? And that part of the show, and I think it was towards the end of the show, maybe the last episode, just really got to me. Yeah, I thought it was.
And when the boy was like, I want him to be my real dad.
Oh man,
like when the show got so real.
Yeah,
like,
dude.
This is the show anticipating the critique of the show.
Yep.
Yeah.
Highlighting the negative aspects of what he's doing and addressing it head on, but not giving a neat, like, tie a bow on it answer.
Yeah.
Because even rehearsals of life don't have neat answers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just like, it was just a moving to see him highlight how, like, not even a rehearsal of life goes the way you expect.
Yeah.
Even rehearsals can be messy and nuanced. Like, it takes a rehearsal to show you the truth and the true reality of life. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
Yeah.
There's a play on words there somewhere I was trying to get, but
yeah,
you get what I'm saying.
I guess I'll just go to my number 5 then, and I did include the number 5.
Are you sure you wrote a 5?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, 7 to 5. I work in banking. This is great. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
So my number 5 is Barry.
right.
I think that's a more appropriate place for Barry. Though it is a little low for me because Barry season 1 and season 2, like if I would have made a list of my favorite shows of those years, Barry would have been 1 or 2 easily. Like Barry, each season's been on previously has been, like, in my opinion, the best TV has to offer. And this season, even with Bill Hader directing more, and getting to see him evolve as a visual storyteller has been really cool. But when Dan brought it up again, I think there was something to where there was a little bit of a lag in the middle of this season where, like, I just was, like, so turned off from Barry as a character and also from his girlfriend, the character, I'm forgetting her name now. Like, they almost, like, went too far beyond the line, and I was, like, just feeling gross.
Right.
All that being said, they bring this season home so well, and the season finale just, like I had to, like, turn around and rewatch it. I thought it was so good, and it, like, just surprised me. So it's number 5. I still am a little shocked that it wasn't higher on my list, but I think that's just a testament to 2022 and
how
some
strong
of the other
TV
shows
has been this year.
Yeah.
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 So
like,
Evan,
I mean, I'm
catch up.
listening to you, and I'm like, yeah, Barry's fantastic. But when I look at my next 4 shows, I'm like, it's in the right spot.
Exactly.
You know?
I can't believe some of the next of my 4 have already been mentioned.
Oh, wow. So you're all flipped around.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Dan, will bring us home. Bring us into the number
4. The Bear.
Me too.
That's also a show I didn't get to yet.
What?
I didn't get to it, man.
Dude.
It's such an easy watch, and it's so stinking. I actually have seen it twice. I watched it once. I actually watched it once in a day, and then I watched it again because I was like, Carly, you've got to watch this show. So we watched it together.
Well, real quick, Dan, before you dive into it, I watched the pilot with you at your house, and I tried to keep watching it, but Anna did not like it. So not trying to throw Anna under the bus or anything, but
she just got run over.
But she's got tire marks on her back.
Well, so me and Jess actually watched this one together, and she loved it as much as I did, which is rare for us both to not just like the same show, because we like a lot of the same shows, but then to rank it, like, at the same level.
Yeah.
I think it's just a testament to the show that that's the case, that it can appeal to that wide of an audience. But I thought it was brilliant. I thought the filmmaking was outstanding. I mean, there's an episode that's basically a oneer, the whole episode.
Yeah.
And it's intense.
Which, brilliant filmmaking.
Man, I can't wait to dive into that.
The whole set is this small kitchen, and so you can get this, like, really claustrophobic kind of feel that just ratchets up the tension in a lot of these things. Plus, the story is just so rich and complex, where you've got these characters that are so similar because they come from the same place yet have grown apart so much to then have them forced together. Like it really is a pressure cooker.
Mm-hmm.
And to just watch that simmer and then boil by the end of the show is it's just a masterclass on writing, and the way it's directed is the same. So yeah, I think it's one of those shows too where like the less you know about it, the better.
Yes.
So like I don't even want to describe the plot too much. I just kind of want to say if you haven't seen it, they're like 20 something minute episodes, and there's like 8 of them,
and it's perfect. Like the length of the show
there's
is
not a
like
dud episode in the mix.
It's perfect.
Just go watch it.
Yeah, it's such an easy watch, and it's also hilarious and heartbreaking.
Well, yeah, that too.
And it's like it makes you feel every emotion. You're gonna laugh. You're gonna feel sad. Is it Jeremy Allen White is the lead?
Yeah, I think so.
I was initially drawn to the show because I liked him so much in Shameless, and he's so freaking likable. And you just root for him so hard the entire time. And it's definitely one of the best shows of the year. It's one of those shows where you're just like, you watch it from beginning to end and you're like, this could have 1 million seasons, or it could just have this one season and it would be perfect. Like it's one of those things where it's like they could keep this going and it would be great. Or if they just did this one season, it would go down in history as just like an amazing just run of episodes and an amazing television show. No, it's just really, really super good. They do a great job of just helping you as an audience like fall in love with each character in the kitchen, which I think is so parallel to what working in a kitchen must be like. One of my favorite like celebrity chef kind of people was a producer on the show, Maddie Matheson. And I know they worked really hard to make it be as accurate as they possibly could in the kitchen. So I think that's just like an extra layer to me that always helps me enjoy the show more whenever I'm watching it, is just knowing like there was a ton of attention to detail. And it's just so stinking good, man. If you haven't seen it, just go watch it. It's easy. Just watch it.
It's easy. Just watch it.
It's an easy watch. It really is.
You open your eyeballs and you stare at a screen.
And you talk about like a show that like keeps you coming back for more. Like
for seconds.
I did not. I just want to take another bite. But no, yeah, it was like at the end of every episode, it was like, there's no possible way I am not turning on the next episode.
Evan, you're like the guy at the mall kiosk with the free samples of the bear.
Just one more.
Like, just have a little bite.
One more.
Have a little bite of the bear.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, Andrew, you're crazy for not watching it yet. You got to watch it.
I want to, man. Okay, number 4, right?
Yep.
Okay, my number 4, House of the Dragon.
Nice.
There you go.
Evan and I already made a podcast and video on this, so I'm just going to reiterate what we said there. But I think they made such a wise choice, making the dramatic tension boil down to like these 3 or 4 characters who are all related. And once you get past the first episode, you know what all of those characters want. You know how all those characters rub against each other in the wrong way. And thinking about how some of those storylines go, that was not an appropriate...
and rub against each other in other ways.
I was going to say, knowing how that goes, using the term rub together was a bit of a misstep on my part. But but how all those characters conflict with each other.
Sure.
Because you instantly know what they want, what their desires are, what their weaknesses are and strengths. And I don't know, talk about a masterclass in writing as well, because it's just so simple, and where it's like, okay, we're going to bring it down to one house. We're not going to go to 12 different parts of Westeros and 12 different cities and all that stuff. They're related. They're fighting for the throne, and they all have these different wants and needs, and here's how they conflict. Boom, put them in a room, see what happens. And it's just pure drama at its finest. Mm-hmm. And it's almost a little kind of pulpy in its soap opera, maybe not pulpy, but it's very soap opera-y at times.
Yeah.
but like in a very elegant way. I don't know. Evan, is it higher in your list too?
It is higher on my list.
Okay.
Yes.
So you can get to it. When you get
we'll
to
get to it later.
But yeah, love House of the Dragon.
All right. Number 3. This is getting exciting. My number 3 is Andor.
That's mine too.
All right.
Yes. Dude, I'm so happy you had Andor high up on your list.
Oh, yeah. Andor. Is it higher on your list, Evan?
I have not yet seen it.
Oh, my God.
And here we go. Here's where it's going to get bad for us. Okay.
Be careful.
I'm already getting tons of
hateful comments
I'm
about
going
Star
to be
Wars.
as cautious as I possibly can here. But in a world where you have many mediocre Star Wars shows that are coming out, and not to say
that's
that they're
not controversial.
all,
Just don't name which ones you think are
not to
mediocre.
say that they're all mediocre, but I personally, whenever I see another one coming out, I'm full. I feel like I have been to the buffet and I've loaded my plate up with Star Wars and I've eaten all that I can eat. And whenever I see another one drop, it's just kind of like, I'm just stuffed. I don't know if I can do it.
So I relate to this, Evan, because when it first came out, I was like, no thanks. I'm not watching this because we got burned on, and I am going to name drop because I don't care. I got burned with Obi-Wan Kenobi. I was like, this is going to be amazing, and it was shit.
It was bad.
So
it was bad.
He's not even sugarcoating it at all. He's just going straight in.
We got burned. So when Andor came out, I was like, nah.
Yeah.
I also knew that Boba Fett was going to be terrible, so I didn't even watch it. So
there's a couple
that's where I was
episodes in
coming
there
from.
that are good, but
I watched a couple
I'm not
episodes.
gonna watch Boba Fett, and Obi-Wan Kenobi's terrible. Andor, sorry, prejudged. But my boss here, Rich, who's the host of the podcast that I work for, he was like, dude, you have to watch it. And so I did, and I'm so glad because it's brilliant. Like, we've been saying that, but from so many of these shows.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a Star Wars show that uses almost none of the major tropes of Star Wars.
Yep.
It has some of the iconography, but yet is infused with the DNA from the original, still almost more so than some of the movies that like have all of the iconography and all of the stuff like jam-packed, like all the fan service, blah, 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 blah. Here's everything you've ever wanted. This has like almost none of that, and yet feels more like Star Wars than some of the movies that have come out recently. But beyond that, even is the fact that like so Andor has like, you know, every 2 or 3 episodes is like a mini arc, and then you're on to another like mini arc. Mm-hmm. And the arc in the prison was one of the most thrilling things I've ever seen in any TV or movies. Like, it's up there to me with like a Mission Impossible movie. Like it's like that kind of level of,
man, I got so much more TV to watch.
When they're in that hallway and, you know, something happens, and then all of a sudden, Andy's, I'm trying to be vague. But when Andy Serkis, you know the moment I'm talking about. When Andy Serkis says, you know, never more than 12.
Yep.
That line sounds so boring out of context. That was like the most thrilling line I'd ever heard.
Dude, no. This show had some of the best monologues in TV in a long time.
Man, really?
Like, if I talk to anyone from Andor and be like, dude, that monologue, that was great, right? And they'll go, yes. And they'll be thinking of a different monologue.
A different one?
Because there's 5 or 6 from the whole series that like could be the best monologue.
Well, I know I need to watch it. I know.
Well, so it was my number 3 as well. So I guess we'll skip Evan, and then you can do your 3 so I can talk about it real quick. But I just released a whole video essay on Andor, so you guys can watch that to get my,
go hate on it.
Full 7-minute thoughts on
why
it.
It's great.
Yeah. But just like Dan said, Andor captures the spirit of resistance and rebellion better than any Star Wars movie made after 1977. And I say this in the video, but it's so true that every subsequent Star Wars movie or project, especially the Disney ones, are trying to recreate the feeling of you watching Star Wars as like a fan having already seen it. You know what I mean? So they're trying to recreate that feeling you have of remembering Star Wars. Not you actually watching it for the first time, but recreate that feeling of you thinking about your memory of Star Wars, right? Whereas Andor goes, we don't care about your memories of Star Wars. We want to capture what made Star Wars great originally as something that was new, that challenged the status quo, and that challenged like totalitarianism and fascism, and was a story for the people, by the people, because at the time George Lucas was an outcast underdog.
Yeah.
He wasn't this big figure. Star Wars wasn't its own monolithic kind of, you know, juggernaut itself. It was a smaller thing, and Andor really captures that. And if you stripped away all the Star Wars elements, it still works as a great political thriller.
Yeah. Well, I'm sold. It sounds awesome. So am I going next?
Yeah, so you're 3.
So my third one is House of the Dragon.
Nice.
I've affectionately come to call it Hot D.
Hot D.
That's how it's written on my list.
Yeah, me too. No, I mean,
D renewed for
we've
season
already
2.
like we talked about it on on another podcast episode. We've already talked about it a little bit today. It's a great show. Of shows that had me like, oh man, I can't wait till Sunday night so that I can watch the next episode. I was pumped whenever the next episode would come out. We get to watch it, and I was on more than a couple episodes like really, really bummed that I couldn't binge it. And I had to wait a week and, you know, really simmer on what I had just seen. So I'm a sucker for just a super dynamic character, a character that changes a lot throughout the show. And Damon just had me hooked, man. I hated him. I loved him. And then I hated him. And then I really loved him. So, I'm a sucker for those characters. And they're in spades in House of the Dragon, so I love that show. Yeah,
House of the Dragon, like, you know, I hear people, especially older women, talk about like, oh, I gotta watch my soap. I gotta cancel all my plans to watch my soap. I've never related to that expression or feeling until I watched House of the Dragon, because it really did feel like okay, it's time to watch my soap.
It's time to sit down, nestle in, and watch my show.
Watch my stories, you know? That's what it felt like. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's really good. And I initially was like not excited about House of the Dragon, because I usually just, whenever it comes to like bleeding a franchise for all it's worth, I just never get very excited. Anytime there's a prequel or they're just gonna do more, I just get weary, and I could not have been more wrong. So,
you initially said Rings of Power was better.
Let's just not focus on that right now. Okay?
Yeah, you took enough of a beating in that comment section.
All right. We ready for number 2?
Number 2, I feel like I have to know what this is. Go ahead.
My number 2 is White Lotus.
Yep. I knew it. Wow. I knew it. It's my number 2 as well.
Really?
You and I have been
not on my list. Terrible ending.
What?
Whoa. Yep. I did not see this coming.
Hated that finale.
Whoa.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay.
I loved it. What did you hate about it? I'm so curious.
I just thought it did not pay off on any of the storylines in a satisfying way.
Oh, wow. I just disagree. I don't even know where to start. Like,
I feel like that's kind of the point.
Jennifer Coolidge's,
it is
the ending of specifically Jennifer Coolidge's like storyline. Like, I thought it was so like laughably bad. Like the way that resolved, it just felt like the way it was building up to me, it just like petered out. So just like unfulfilling.
Just literally fell flat.
Yeah, it literally did fall flat. And then I was like, okay, well, maybe that was the point. And the more I thought about it, I was like, if it was, like, there was nothing really interesting about that being the point. And so, and then, like, the way Audrey Plaza and her husband and the other couple, like, theirs kind of climaxed, like, earlier than that. So then
I loved how that ended. I loved how those relationships
I almost
ended.
was like, okay, well, if that's how Jennifer Coolidge's story was going to be, like, just let's not even go there and let's spend more time with the couples and have that resolve and not have Jennifer Coolidge eat up 90% of the runtime of the finale. So, like, I left that finale just, like, very muddled and kind of cold and confused in it. Whereas what was it, 7 episodes prior, I was, like, having a ball and laughing. And
sure.
So, anyway.
I mean, I laughed so hard whenever the thing at the end happened. But go ahead, Dan. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say that, I mean, you got to remember, it's a farce, right? And so I thought the endings were all perfect. And they're tragedy endings because the two couples, the way their storyline ends is that Aubrey Plaza and the other guy, I don't know the actor's name, they end up becoming the other couple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What happened was he's telling a story about how, like, becoming wealthy can be corruptible. And so one couple basically corrupted another couple and turned them into a version of themselves. Because if you look at the end when they're in the airport, their body language is completely different and is the same as the other couple's body language.
There's the only story I liked.
Yeah, they lured them into the kind of same relationship that they have, where they each, like, cheat on each other and have these weird secrets, and they turned this couple that never lied to each other, you know, completely into something else. And so it's like, that's how corruptible power and sex and money can be. And then you have the 3 generations of the men that ends in a tragedy where you have the youngest son who's really trying to be different from his, you know, other generations above him. And yet it's almost like too liberal. Like he's trying too hard. But then by the end, after what he experienced, like, he's just, you know, played. And then when that woman walks by them in the airport, you just see all 3 of them just completely objectify her, and you go, okay, nothing's changing in these generations. Like, that young man is exactly the same as the other 2. Like, so are we really making any progress as a society in that vein? And then with Jennifer Coolidge, it was like, it was leading that way the whole time. It was like, of course she was going to be the one because, you know, all the little breadcrumbs, it was like almost too obvious that I overthought it. And I was like, who's going to be the, you know, who's going to die?
Right.
And then when that happened, I was like, oh, of course. And it's so laughable. But she still has her, like, moment of triumph. You know what I mean? Like, she figures it out. She, you know, swings back, fights back, succeeds, and yet her demise is her own. Like, she's always been her own worst enemy. She was going to do something really great in season 1 with that employee, and then, you know, shot herself in the foot and just, like, moved on. Like, she's always in relationships self-sabotaging, and so that for that to be the way she also is her demise, like, makes complete sense. So yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, I agree completely. I thought that the couples, the 2 couples, how it ended with them, with there being, like, things that weren't said, that were unspoken, like, that were, like, they never talked about it. I just felt like that was such a, like for some people, accurate way that we just kind of go throughout our lives. There's just like a unspoken thing. It happened. We never really talked about it, but I got even, or I made myself feel better in another way. And now we're just going to kind of keep going and kind of like the perception is reality, saying that you hear really comes to life with the jealousy that he was having over something he didn't even know had happened, where it's just like he perceives that's the case. So it's like he now cannot live with himself without knowing, without a shadow of a doubt, whether or not it happened, but he never will. And so I loved kind of the unspoken way that ended with those couples. I thought it was great, and I agree with everything you said, Dan.
Yep.
So that was your two.
Yep.
Okay, so my two,
number 2
is Severance.
Okay.
I went back and forth with Severance being my 1 or 2, but when I get to my 1, I'll explain why that's my 1. But again, Severance really shocked me. It was not on my radar coming into 2022. I think it's a really unique show where it takes that J.J. Abrams mystery box element, but unlike shows like that in the past where it's driven by the mystery, and then once the mystery is revealed, there's kind of nothing character-wise or thematic-wise kind of underneath that. This actually had something to say underneath the mystery, and it was driven with something to say rather than just, song and dance of, oh, look at this thing that's interesting that you're not going to figure out. It was all tied together very well, and I was just constantly being surprised with the world building of that office. And as someone who works in a very monotoned, bland, stereotypical office building and spends a lot of time at work, what this was saying about American work culture hit really close to home with me. And that's not me saying like I hate my work. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying like the drone of going to work day in, day out, spending less and less time at home, like that really hit home. And so just whew, amazing.
Yeah, Severance was my number 6. I don't think I talked about it at the time. So I'll piggyback here and just say like it did. I think Ben Stiller is a really underrated director because the directing in this show did some really unique things, all motivated by character and motivated by story.
Yep.
And the best example of that is the effect that they use with the lenses when the characters are in the elevator. And they switch from one character,
that dolly
one
zoom
version of themselves to the other.
Yeah.
They do basically like a dolly zoom effect, which changes the focal length of the lens, which makes the faces go from looking round and flat to long and pointy.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't go back and rewatch. I had like a theory, and I was like, if I was still making Why It's Great, I would have gone back and watched and like see if I could make a video essay about this. But I'm kind of convinced that every time they shoot the character outside of the office, they're using one focal length of lenses.
Mm-hmm.
And every time they're shooting the characters on the inside, they're using a different set of focal length of the lenses. And when you get that elevator like shifting, you're going from one to another, and then you're using just a whole different set of lenses on each. So that subtly in your brain, like when they're, when each one is when you're cutting back and forth from in and out, your brain can know like, okay, this really is the outie. And this really is the innie on a really subtle way. I don't know. I loved that.
Well, and then
aspect to the show.
The other visual thing they do is they put, not Adam Driver,
Adam Scott.
Adam Scott. They put him on 1/3 of the frame a lot, where he's kind of almost severed from the rest of his environment. Where they put him in the far right or the far left. And I noticed that a lot in the first couple episodes, and I was like, man, like that's just a really simple visual cue to be like, look how empty the rest of his environment is and like how distant he is from it. And he's kind of always just severed from things.
Yeah. Yep. I love Severance too.
Did it even make your list at all?
Yep.
Oh, okay. I was like, you said it like, you know. Okay.
Well, it's
That's
my
great.
I mean, I can go ahead and just say it's my number one.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I put it as my number one. So I
guess
loved
that's
it.
the only spot left. So
Yeah, I loved it. I will say I was at first wasn't immediately grabbed.
that's right. Yeah.
I was not immediately grabbed by the show. I do believe it's more than a little. It's pretty slow at the beginning, and they are really taking their time and doing a lot of those visual things to cue you into what's going on in the characters' lives and what's going to happen in the rest of the show. I didn't immediately appreciate that like I should have, but that is why it felt a little bit slow. They really take their time to kind of like set that up visually, which now looking back, I really appreciate. But I mean, talk about at the end of a show, just absolute agony for wanting more.
Yeah.
Man, they leave us in agony wanting more episodes of that show. And
that cliffhanger.
yeah, dude. Yeah. So, I mean,
Great.
you guys have said enough about it. I loved it. If you haven't seen it, you got to watch it. If you feel like it's slow at the beginning, just stay strong and keep going because it is awesome.
So I think that it's come down to number one for me, and I think me and Andrew have the same
we
number
have
one.
to be, yeah. Yeah,
Which
Bing Bong's
is-
Playhouse.
Bing Bong's Playhouse.
Bing Bong's Playhouse.
It is Better Call Saul, baby.
Yeah, baby.
Better Call Saul.
No wonder you had such severe reactions.
Forget me not liking White Lotus season 2, and forget me forgetting the number 6 existed. That is the crime of the
You
episode.
cannot say that me having Better Call Saul at number 6 is the crime of the episode after you forgot number 6 completely.
Dude, if I had to bet my whole life savings, which isn't much after this wedding, what your number one would have been, I would have been like, it has to be Better Call Saul. So
I don't. Well,
Yeah, Better Call Saul.
Well.
The one of the greatest television shows, not just of the year, I think of all time.
I would agree
One
with
of the
you.
best finales of all time. Like that's a spot where a lot of shows fail. Even great shows fail in the finale.
Vince does not fail on finales.
They stuck the landing. They did it again.
Yeah.
Like it's just it had everything. I think everything we've talked about in each of these shows, each show like highlighted a thing, like the directing or the writing or like emotional tug or like this or
visual
that,
storyline,
performances.
storytelling, yeah.
Better Call Saul has all of it in this season. I could not wait to see the next one every week. Every week I was moved. I found something profound about humanity. They were making statements about life. And it just tied together the whole series when you think about how each season started with that black and white, vignette. And you're like, what is that building towards? And then not only to get like one episode to see where that build towards, but to get like 3 or 4 episodes at the end, all in black and white, shot classically like an old movie. It's almost like there's no more words to describe how perfectly that just hit me. You know what I mean? And like how much they stuck that landing.
Right. I mean, I loved it, but I had it at 6. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I will say I'm actually really proud of the conversation you and I had when we reviewed the finale.
Yeah.
So definitely check that out. But yeah, exactly what Dan said. Like it just checks every box, and the fact that it not only had a payoff with the Jimmy McGill Saul storyline, but it also paid off all of Breaking Bad before it too, which is a monumental task where it has to tie a bow on the post Breaking Bad stuff, but also tie a bow on its own show. And the fact that it did both and it added new depth to Breaking Bad looking backward at it.
Yeah.
Especially that scene, which was that in the penultimate or the finale? Anyway, where you see Jimmy and Walter have that conversation in that like bunker about like what would you do if you go back in time, like just seeing that flesh out Walter's perspective a little more and how it differs from Jimmy and how their arcs are actually very different, just was so beautiful. And man, that final shot, that's all I can say is that final shot.
It's incredible. Here's one small thing that's an example. It's like a microcosm of the thought and care that makes the show great, is that, and it's really small and I don't know why it stuck out to me, but in the episode in season 3 or 4 where Jimmy's brother is on trial and Jimmy slips that cell phone in his pocket.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And he's trying to explain on the stand like what his condition is. And Jimmy asks him, like, can you feel some electricity right now? The camera cuts to a wide angle of the room.
Yes.
But from behind like an exit sign.
Yep.
And when it cuts to that, you hear the buzz of the electricity. In the finale, when Jimmy is standing up and like basically showing that he's changed and he's confessing now, he mentions his brother, and as soon as he mentions his brother in that speech, it goes to the same shot. Did you catch that?
Yeah, I think I did.
It cuts to a wide angle from an exit sign with a buzz, and I went, son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Like
every little detail, man.
They just it's every little detail. Yeah.
I mean, like, look, I mean, how could someone not put it as their number one? Like, I can't imagine some bloke making a list.
Look, some people might make the mistake of thinking that number 10 on the list is a bad television show. But I don't think that any show on this list is a bad TV show. They're all amazing. And you asked me to list them.
Here.
And I did. And that's what happened.
Here's what happened. I actually pulled a number 6 from my list so I could give Evan an extra number so he could have 2 number ones and make Better Call Saul his one.
There you go.
Thank you guys for taking the mantle and for having me back today.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a pleasure. Hopefully we can figure out a way to get you back on the show again on a more regular basis. Because again, this is an open podcast relationship. You know, we're open to exploring.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, I think maybe the listeners are a little tired of us and want to get some new voices in. Though we finally did disagree on something.
Yes,
again,
we did.
So that was interesting. I wasn't ready for that. And that probably took up too much of the runtime today, but you know, I'm glad we could do something different. And so yeah, be on the lookout for top 10 movies. Check out the Rich Roll podcast and the work Dan does over there. It's really good. It's really cool. So you can put that in your podcast rotation. And here's to a great 2023.
Amen.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.